I'm Jonathan Samet, Chair of the Department of Preventive Medicine of the Keck School of Medicine of the University of Southern California. We're going to be discussing a recent commentary I wrote for the New England Journal of Medicine on the Clean Air Act. Well, the Clean Air Act was passed in 1970 and subsequently amended in 1977 and 1990. The purpose of the Clean Air Act was really to have a broad umbrella under which to manage air quality in the United States. Sure. So let me describe a little bit first about when smog first hit LA. And one of the first well-documented episodes was 1943. It was a public health emergency. Suddenly the air was dangerous. It was chemically reactive. Women's nylons dissolved. People wore gas masks. And they really did not know what was going on, except that it seemed to be affecting them adversely. And it was later, about within 10 years, that we knew about the chemistry of ozone and how the combination of sunlight and automobile exhaust led to the generation of what we now call smog. LA has come a long way. I remember interviewing out here for an internship in 1970, a long time ago, and being at UCLA, and you could see a block. And of course, it used to be that when you landed in Los Angeles, the mountains disappeared and you didn't see them again. But now, sitting in my office, as I said in the editorial, I see the mountains every day. Yes, the air is not always perfect, but the data show that it's much cleaner than it used to be. Right. So when we talk about smog, we're usually referring to sort of this mixture of ozone or oxidant pollution that comes along with this combination of sunshine, still air, and lots of hydrocarbons and nitrogen oxides that are typically emitted by vehicles. So smog was a problem in LA, and of course now it's a nationwide problem affecting much of the Northeast, the Southeast, and some of our large metropolitan areas because of the density of people and the amount of vehicle traffic. So smog is, it's a very oxidant-rich mixture, and so the first concern is sort of the places it touches. So, in the past and at high levels, smog causes people's eyes to burn, their throat to be irritated, causes cough, causes a drop in lung function that fortunately reverses, at least on the short term. We've had a study going on here in my department for almost 20 years now, the Children's Health Study, that has tracked the health of thousands of children in relationship to their air pollution exposure, and smog being part of that mixture. And they found that certainly asthma can be worsened, perhaps asthma can be triggered by the smog, and we know that this mixture slows down lung growth of children. There's other data suggesting, and again, this is all being looked at right now because we're re-examining our ozone standard, suggesting that mortality is increased by higher levels of ozone. Right, sure. I actually think that one important point to make is that vehicle miles, of course, have gone way, way up. If you look over the decades, they keep going up. But in fact, ozone levels are going down, and that's because vehicles have become cleaner and cleaner. So it's a little hard to track. There's no disease that sort of is a so specific a link to smog that we could say, well, we're following, asthma as an indicator. We know that asthma has risen, and fortunately now the prevalence seems to be stabilizing. Perhaps air pollution has contributed to that. We still haven't sorted that problem out. Right, so the Clean Air Act, as I indicated earlier, is a very broad program targeted at levels of pollutants and emissions from key sources. So it covers the major source categories and specifies that we should be using sort of the best available approaches to limit pollution from them, including coal-fired power plants. So, with regard to the first point, certainly we have transborder transport of air pollution, and we're, of course, a source of pollution for Mexico and for Canada. But as you point out, we now know that pollution reaches here from Asia, and there's some massive atmospheric pollution phenomenon that do reach us. This type of pollution right now is sort of outside of regulation. I think there's one example of a global effort to control pollution. That was the pollution by chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, which of course affected the ozone layer, and there we had a very successful initiative, the Montreal Protocol, that helped to reduce CFC use, but nothing analogous right now for air pollution per se. I mean, clearly any treaties that eventually deal with global warming will affect trans-border international transport. So right now, with regard to air pollution, we see, as I point out in my commentary, that the Clean Air Act has proven effective in the United States. Air pollution levels are far lower, but we're still seeing adverse health effects. So we still have some work to do, and epidemiological studies, studies with people experimentally exposed to ozone and other pollutants show that there are effects at current levels. They're getting smaller. What we really don't want to do is return to where things used to be. So if you go back to the London fog of 1952, maybe 10,000 extra people unexpectedly died during 1 week from very high pollution levels. In the United States in the 50s and 60s, we had serious episodes of pollution, not only in California, but in the East Coast, where it did not take advanced statistics to look and see that too many people had died. Certainly the health of children was affected. So we have come a long way. The air is cleaner. We still find evidence of health risks, and we want to make sure that the public health is protected. That said, I think we also value clean air. And I think if you talk to people in LA, they certainly would probably all say, I'd rather see the mountains than to not see the mountains. And that's a quality of life and a health benefit as well.